Hello, everybody. I am Dr. Anthony Pellegrino from APSA Chiropractic, and I am so excited to be here today with Lisa Sosnowski from the Spectrum Tech Trade School. So today we're going to be talking all about our upcoming event on April 23rd that you guys have heard and seen us post and speak and email and text and talk about nonstop because we are just super, super, super excited for our Learning, Behaviors, and Emotions half-day workshop. We're going to have a lot of great speakers, resources, different individuals in the community here to help each of us not only get a better understanding, but really take action for our families, for our kids with neurodevelopmental challenges, because we know that when we focus on fostering great development, that the outcomes are just huge and massive, and we really want to help empower families to be able to do that. So the event is April 23rd, 9:30 a.m. at St. Denis Roman Catholic Church in Manasquan. So we're excited for you guys to join there. In the text below is where you can register for that. So we have you locked in. We can keep you involved and make sure we reserve you a seat. And the event is 100% free to the public. But what's really cool is that we've made the decision to partner with a nonprofit. So obviously, vendors, sponsors, different things like that, 100% of proceeds are going to be going towards a nonprofit who I'm really excited about, where Lisa's from, which is Spectrum Tech Trade School. So Lisa, thank you so much for joining me.
Well, thank you, Dr. Pellegrino. We are very excited to be the featured nonprofit. We are a startup. So we are still raising money to create this, what we call our learning ecosystem, which will be basically a trade school on an organic farm, which will be an agricultural innovation center, which will also employ autistic adults, as well as teaching students from the age of 12 to 21. And we hope to have some housing, which is a real crisis right now in the community, as well as a village that will eventually be connected with it to encourage autistic entrepreneurship, as well as additional housing and a medical center where we can have therapies where what most people call alternative type therapies. But I personally feel, as a mom of an autistic son, my son's turning 16 this year, that a lot of those actually alternative therapies caused his development to move forward. A lot of schools right now just focus on behavioral challenges, and instead of looking at the root cause of those behavioral challenges, so they're basically extinguishing behaviors and teaching people by repetition, which there was a study in 2015 that said teaching autistics with repetition actually decreases their ability to generalize and actually stagnates their development. So we are trying to do something different. And instead of just working on this repetitive type of learning, we want to do a more of experiential learning, immersive experience where we're actually incorporating these therapies inside the classrooms, as well as teaching marketable trade skills. Because currently, the pre-pandemic statistics for employment for autistic adults was horrible. 90% of autistic adults were either unemployed or underemployed, and 50% of 25-year-olds had never held a paying job. So that is definitely not a road to independence. And as a parent, that is very important to me, especially for what I call the middle child of the spectrum, which is where my son currently is. He has apraxia and other co-current conditions that really have caused language delays in him. So he is really underestimated in a lot of what he does. When he was 5 years old and maybe spoke one word, he took his iPad out, and we used to get him lots of apps with flashcards on it. And to show me he wanted to go to Turkey Swamp Park in Jackson, he showed me a picture of the flag of the country of Turkey and a picture of a swamp. So, I mean, that's a 5-year-old. He knew the country's flag of Turkey. So, I mean, obviously that shows intelligence, But yet, if you looked at what they're doing with him currently in the school that he's in academically, it's a joke.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think they've been focusing so much on, compliance and things like that versus really helping someone develop creativity, creatively. A lot of autistics are creative, and we really don't address that at all in a school system. Right. So Spectrum Tech is going to incorporate as well the creative side. My son's a great photographer. If you look at our Instagram account at Spectrum Tech Trade School, you can see his pictures, and it's really amazing. He has a great eye, and most people, when they meet him, will underestimate him. I've had people tell me he drives his own go-kart at I Play America, and they've seen him at therapy, and then they see him there and they're like, I can't believe he can drive his own go-kart. And I'm like, well, the spectrum is circular. It's not linear. So you can't assume just because someone has difficulty in one area that they're going to have the same difficulty in another area.
Right.
So that's the idea of Spectrum Tech too. We want to really look at individualized programs. I know and most schools say they do individual programs, but not really, because they kind of have this vanilla, overlay of what they're doing with these kids. And I think we really need to drill down, even in the therapeutic setting. We don't drill down because there's different aspects of every therapy. In speech therapy, there is, we're doing drills with most kids to drill whatever word we're working on, instead of looking at, well, like my son, he's now seeing an oral myofunctional therapist because he had a tongue tie, which was surgically corrected when he was 2, but no one told us we had to do oral motor exercises for him.
Right.
So that basically, without doing that, it has delayed his speech even more.
Yeah.
Because, you really need to drill down on what's wrong. I mean, I'm sure, in chiropractic, you have to drill down on what actually is the problem, that the person is having. You can't just say, oh yeah, well, we're going to just do this or this. And that fixes everybody.
Yeah. A perfect example. And I'm just thinking back what you're talking about. And by the way, when I'm looking down, I'm taking notes, learning from you, because I'm transparent. I don't have a child on the spectrum. It's just something that I'm just extremely passionate about, these neurodevelopmental challenges. And so just listening, I had a post the other day talking about the event that majority, and this is 100% true, majority of the registrations for this event happened between the hours of midnight and 3 a.m. And for me, that is such a humbling fact. And the reason why I love that so much is that, and if you guys are listening to this, I know and picture each mom, each dad, each uncle, each aunt, each person up in the middle of the night searching for answers for their kiddo, right? Someone who's never going to quit. And I so incredibly hear that and see that from you, so much of the fact that you've seen these. When you found that you started to get answers, you were like, well, this needs to be on a bigger scale. I don't see what I think needs to exist. So why don't I create something from nothing, right? And that's such a beautiful thing to hear. And then just kind of what you're talking about with the individualization. So a big thing that we talk about with a lot of parents is there's all different types of development, right? There's reflexive development, there's gross and fine motor development, there's audio and visual, there's cognitive, there's all these different types of development. And typically a child will, on the spectrum, will have deflections in 1, 2, or more, depending on so many different factors that mean we don't have 6 years to talk about this. So we can't go into all of them. So we'll see, like, let's say fine motor, and we'll do some different tests. So we'll have a kiddo like take a pen and write their name, right? You're talking about repetition, right? So they'll write their name and it'll be beautiful and flawless, right? And then it's like, we'll write mommy's name, right? What's mommy's name? And then we'll go from a perfect pen hold to now we're gripping it like this. We're gripping it like a different way, and we struggle. And it's because the repetition, we learn to do that specific task, which is good. We need to learn that. But there's other developmental things that we need to do as well to get those brain connections that now we can apply that to the concept and not just to the individual task. Right? Does that kind of, did I hit that?
That's exactly, that's correct, because most of these are task specific. So, I went to the transition conference with Autism New Jersey several years ago, way before my son was ready for transition, because I like to prepare. And that's kind of where Spectrum Tech got the idea, because I stood up and I'm like, why aren't there trade schools for these kids? Because either you can go to college or you can't. And if you can't, then you have these menial jobs to do. And I'm like, but these kids can do so much more. You just have to be able to teach them. So there was somebody there that actually was talking about their adult program. And they said, well, we have a hospitality program. And this man, he can come on the floor and make up all the rooms, and he'll know to ask for 50 sheets. But if you give him 49 sheets, he has no idea what to do. So that's not good, because you're really making the person dependent on someone else to be able to problem solve for them. That's really not addressed. Executive functioning skills are usually not addressed at school as well. So we're only doing piecemeal things. A lot of times OT is, like you said, handwriting, but it's writing my name, it's writing, my address. So the kids will know how to write those specific tasks, but not if you have to generalize and actually write a paragraph of something.
Right. And so, not necessarily putting that down specifically, but there's just other things that also have to be addressed to really make that connection. Right. So I want to get more into specifically the trade school itself. Right. And who can benefit, who can go, what's all that going to look like. But first, I mean, we already talked about you having a 16-year-old now and staying up in the middle of the night looking for answers. Right. I just want to hear, I happen to think you're a great storyteller. And I just want to hear a little bit more about your journey, that what brought you from that mom looking, figuring things out, to where we're at today.
Well, you'll find my story very interesting, because we were worried about my son's development at 18 months. And we actually approached the pediatrician and said, we're concerned because he's really not pointing, and he's really not responding to his name anymore, and he's not speaking. So could he be autistic? And she was like, oh no, boys just develop more slowly with speech. Don't be too concerned. Kids give up, because he did have some words at one point, and then he didn't. He said mommy and daddy. He said good, good, good. He said eat, and then he stopped saying these things. And she's like, well, kids sometimes regress in their development and then go forward. And we really were having a lot of problems with ear infections at the time. And we went to my chiropractor at the time, and whereas getting my son adjusted. And he actually said, if you're very concerned, you really should contact somebody with early intervention. So by the time we went to my son's 2-year-old appointment, the doctor had changed her tune and was like, oh, you have to go see a neurologist. I think he could be autistic. And she's like, oh, you should contact early intervention. I'm like, we already did. My chiropractor told me that several months ago. So we got on the list, and we didn't have that long wait. So it was actually through chiropractic that we got into early intervention. Cool. So I think that's actually a common story, because I belong to groups in Monmouth County, the Monmouth County Children's Interagency Coordinating Councils, and I'm with their Intellectual Developmental Disability Committee. And the other parents there have similar stories where, a pediatrician may not tell you that your child is having challenges. They just kind of brush it off down the road. And I think that's really detrimental, since everyone knows the earlier the intervention for the child, the better. But I also think that a lot of these interventions should be more mainstream. I think chiropractic has helped my son. He loves, going to the chiropractor. We've been going to the chiropractor for years now. It's not like, something that should be not a mainstream thing, because if your central nervous system isn't working, obviously the connections to your brain aren't working. So once he was sent into early intervention, I just started researching and researching and researching. We did a lot of biomedical interventions, and then went on and on and on, and found this book called Outsmarting Autism by Patricia Lemmer.
Mm-hmm.
Patricia is actually on the advisory committee of Spectrum Tech.
Awesome.
So she lists all these different interventions in it. What I love about the book is she goes and gives like a little snippet of all these different interventions. And I just started looking into it. I was like, wow, I want to try that. And, you know, we started with cranial sacral therapy that actually helped a lot with his oral motor. He couldn't say a lot of even the sounds, not even putting them together. He couldn't say a lot of the sounds. I have the speech therapist at his school actually told me, wow, he can say these sounds now that you started this intervention. So that's how we met Dr. Jackie, who happens to be the vice president of the board of directors. And we started working with her. And then she introduced me to Dr. Lane. And then we started working with the developmental optometrist. So we were doing that as well. And then you wind up saying, wow, I'm going to therapy 5 days a week, and my child's going to school 5 days a week. And I'm, you know, that's where I was like, a lot of these therapies should be done in school. We should be doing vision therapy in school, because if we can't read, we can't really develop to a point where, you know, once we learn to read, we read to learn. So we're kind of really stifling development at that point. So it's kind of all these things we have to be building on. And parents just don't have the time to be driving all over the state, because I've been doing it. You know, I have 109,000 miles on my car, and it's only a few years old. So, you know, you have to find good people. Not every therapist or doctor is the same, you know. So it's just finding all these people, and it's difficult. Like you said, parents are up, you know, midnight, 3 a.m. looking on the internet, trying to find people.
Yeah. And I mean, just listening to you say that, so I'm just, it's like, I know you've been to one of our workshops on this topic in the past, but it's as though you're just in my head all the time, because it's what I say all the time is what you just said. And even with those developmental delays or these things that you're noticing, first of all, the biggest thing, if for those listening, is like mom tuition is such a thing. So if you have questions, if you have doubts, if you find that the answers that you're getting are not what you know is the case, I trust moms more than anyone else. Like we just know, right? You just know so much, just have such a good mom tuition. I think it's so important. And even with these things, I mean, with milestones, for example, I think this is just such a huge thing to just put out on the table. Is it's like, let's say, you know, maybe your son, maybe we weren't outside of the realm. Maybe if it, you know, 12 to 18 months, we're at 17 months and 30 days instead of 31, right? But the thing is that just because something isn't a problem yet, doesn't that mean that there's not something that we can do to make it better. Right. So like a really good analogy is like a 10-minute running it for the name was a runner. I'm an old runner, right? So a 10-minute mile is great, right? We should be able to run a 10-minute mile. Doing that is great, but that doesn't mean that like there's nothing you can do to get from a 10-minute to a 9-minute mile, right? And then you can train even harder. Maybe not everyone's going to run a 4-minute mile, but we can always do things better, right? So it's like there's no problem with running a 10-minute mile, but if we could just do a little bit of work to get faster, why wouldn't we want to do that? And the same thing with development. We could be hitting all of our marks spot on, but if there's things that we can do to just improve things, enhance brain plasticity, why wouldn't we want to do that, right? Spectrum or not, right? Why wouldn't we want to just be the best versions of ourselves and have our kids be the best versions of themselves? So I love hearing your journey, and cool. I'm glad you had a good chiropractor. That makes me so happy to hear. Selfishly, I love that. That's awesome. We have a great profession, and there's some really good ones of us out there. So I'm so glad that you found one. So then tell me more about, we said that the education for this school is 12 to 21. Okay. Can you kind of walk me through a little bit about the ideal person that you guys are looking to reach, or what somebody's journey finding you and working with you is going to look like?
Well, my dream is to work with children or students like my son that aren't fitting into the public school system, that aren't necessarily college material. Because obviously, if autistic people can go to college, they should go to college if they want to do something that a college can offer them. I am 100% behind that, because I'm behind, autistic empowerment. I'm wearing red instead of blue, because that's what autistic people prefer. They say they're not blue or sad. So red is a good color for empowerment, I think. And, but we're working with, like what I say, the middle childhood spectrum, children that have language delays, children that may not be able to keep up academically in college. Because if you can't keep up academically, they do have TIPSID programs, but they're only giving you a certificate anyway. And that basically is costing money out of pocket, for these programs. My program would be through, being an out of district placement. So you would be able to not have the burden on the parents. That's the idea of it. But to have it where it's a tranquil place, on an organic farm. So kids with sensory issues, my son has, a lot of sensory issues. So that's why we're looking for the tranquil environment, as well as a lot of therapies like art therapy and drama therapy and, agricultural, horticulture therapy, where you're actually getting out in nature. And they said even, the chemical changes in the brain when you're around plants is, it really calms you down. So the idea is to really work with kids that have, anxiety issues as well, because our program is really going to work on co-regulation and self-regulation, because that really is why people are successful in their adult life. If you can't regulate when you get upset, which happens a lot, especially if you're driving on the road, you definitely have to be able to regulate yourself so you can basically stick to task and focus. Because if you're in fight or flight, you're not going to be focusing on anything that is complex. That's for sure.
Cool. Well, that sounds amazing. I love everything that you're doing. I love the tranquil environment, the farm, the focusing on fostering good development or better development, and then just really working with each individual kid, helping us get or transitioning into adulthood, really just getting out of that fight or flight into that growth and development, and then just helping everyone be their best selves. It sounds really amazing. Anything else you want to share with us that I should have asked that I didn't?
Just that if people want to check us out, our website is www.spectrumtechtradeschool.com, and they can contact me. It's just Lisa, Lisa, at spectrumtechtradeschool.com. Really simple. Since Sosnowski's not that easy to pronounce or to write, I figured just go with Lisa. People can remember that. And check us out on Instagram at Spectrum Tech Trade School.
Cool. And I'll link to all of those in the comments right after we get off this. So I want to thank you so much for joining me today and for being our featured nonprofit. Again, the event is April 23rd at 9:30 a.m. at the Spectrum Tech. I'm not at the St. April 23rd, 9:30 a.m. at St. Denis Church in Manasquan. It's going to be amazing. We have speakers, resources. It's just all about doing what we can to help each family take the action that's necessary to, just like Lisa shared her journey, we want that for everyone. Okay. So we hope to see you guys there. In the text, there is a link to get registered if you haven't done that yet. In the comments is going to be all of Lisa's information. There is also, if you just heard everything that you want and everything that you just heard, and you said, I really want to get down and support this nonprofit. Again, the event itself is free to the public, but there are still vendor and sponsorship opportunities available. So put in the comments or just shoot us a DM and let us know that you're interested in that. And I'll personally send out some information. We would love to have you. Okay.
That's
Lisa,
great.
thank you so much.
I look forward to meeting everybody there because I'll be at the event as well. So I look forward to meeting other parents, and other parents' involvement would be great. So we look forward to connecting with parents that want to get this trade school off the ground, because parents really uniting together can change the world.
Sure, of course. Well, thank you guys so much, and I look forward to seeing you there. Thanks again, Lisa.
All right. Thank you.